If Israel goes in on the ground and that starts, how does this end? Does it end with the U.S. and Iran potentially being drawn more actively into this conflict?
Well, that's a real possibility. I think the Israelis at this particular point feel that they have Hezbollah on its heels. And they intend to press this certainly into Lebanon itself. The question will be how far and how long. Anytime you you invade another country, so to speak, or you create a buffer zone by establishing a presence in another country, the question is how long and, again, what's it going to cost you in terms of possible blood and treasure. As far as the United States is concerned, I think the Israelis feel that this is our war and we're going to fight it the way we want to fight it. And I think that's okay as long as it's Israel's war. When it becomes somebody else's war, like the United States, then it's not quite okay. We have a say in this in terms of its potential spread to Iran. And if we should have to have American troops involved in that particular conflagration, I think at that time the calculation becomes, why did you not take the opportunity for a ceasefire and not try to solve it diplomatically? So right now I think the Israelis feel they have decapitated the leadership. They have interrupted communications. Iran right now is unsure of whether it wants to sacrifice Iranians as opposed to just sending Houthis or Hezbollah into the fight. We'll have to wait and see what the Iranians do at this point.
Mr. Secretary, it's always great to have you. I just want to mention quickly some breaking news from the White House. President Biden is speaking about the recovery effort following the hurricane and has just said to reporters that he will be visiting North Carolina this week. He'll be there on Wednesday, and he will do an aerial tour of Asheville, North Carolina. We'll let you know more as we learn it. Mr. Secretary, back to the matter at hand in the Middle East. I spoke earlier today with Natasha Hall from CSIS, the Middle East program senior fellow there. Here's what she had to say about this growing escalation in Lebanon and, to your point, what it would potentially cost in blood and treasure. Let's take a listen.
If Israel decides to actually mount an invasion into Lebanon, they will be mounting an invasion into a country that Hezbollah has had about 18 years to prepare for. So we're talking about tunnel networks. We're talking about still tens of thousands of troops. And frankly, Israel's actions in the past year have created a really limitless supply of soldiers, both in the region and beyond.
Mr. Secretary, this sounds like it could be much more formidable than Hamas in Gaza for the IDF. When we talk about the idea of a limited incursion, what would this actually look like, considering the teeth that these IDF forces would be walking into?
Well, as Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan until I strike them in the face. And that's part of the issue here. The Israelis have a plan in terms of going in and trying to create a buffer zone so that 80,000 Israeli citizens can move back into their homes. The problem is that once you go into another country that is heavily armed, and that may be temporarily without leadership, without credible leadership, it may look good initially, but the longer you're there, the greater the chance that you will start losing soldiers and shed more blood by responding and killing more innocent people. And this is the issue, I think, that Don Rumsfeld raised years ago. Are we creating more terrorists than we're killing? And that will always be an issue if you kill a large number of innocent civilians. The families of those civilians will live for the day that they can retaliate at some point in time against you. So this is something that President Biden has been concerned about, saying, we support you, we're with you, but you have to take care that you don't create more terrorists than you're killing at this particular point. And we think diplomacy is a better solution here. Right now, I think the Israelis are saying, we're on our own for the moment. We don't need you right now. If it comes time to need you, we'll call you. And I don't think it's a positive place for the Israelis to be with the United States, since we are their biggest and strongest supporter. And you don't want to simply wave off the President of the United States saying, sorry, I can't take your call now, or I don't have any interest in listening to you.
Well, so what does that say, sir, about the power of U.S. diplomacy? Is this not getting mildly embarrassing for this administration that keeps saying publicly what it would like Israel to do and Israel not abiding by that?
Well, I think the Biden administration has said publicly what it would like Israel to do. Once again, no president is going to tell the Israelis how to fight a war in that region. That is for the Israelis to decide. But if they engage in conduct which involves others and potentially us and the American people, and should American soldiers start to die in the region because there was no attempt to reach a diplomatic solution, that changes the nature of our relationship going forward. So I don't think that's in Israel's interest. It's certainly not in ours. And I would hope that Prime Minister Netanyahu, whom I have known for more than 40 years, that he is not interested, frankly, in arriving at any kind of a peaceful solution as far as the Palestinians are concerned. He does not want a separate state for the Palestinians, and I believe there will never be security for the Israelis unless the Palestinians have a state. So we're at that particular point where he feels he has to respond to the ultra-conservative wing of his party to stay in power, and that is what they want to do, is to basically clear out the Palestinians from Israel itself, or Palestine, and never have a two-state solution. That's where we are at this particular point. Whether that proves to be in the long run for the Israelis, I don't think so. I think the long run for the Israelis is to have a relationship with the Saudis, the UAE, the Bahrainis, and the other Gulf states. That will bring real security, as opposed to just going into Lebanon at this particular point and then telling the Iranians, try us, see if we respond, and we will respond in a way that you won't like. So I've always believed that you need a big stick, but you also need the stick of diplomacy, and I think you need both right now. The Israelis have demonstrated that they're prepared to wage war. They have to be interested in saying we're prepared to also wage diplomacy here with the help and support of the United States, NATO countries, and all others who are concerned that this not spin out of control and affect the world economy.